Okay. Now, this I have not, let's see, I'm going to check one thing really fast. I have not gotten an update about kits being done. They should be done tomorrow. And I hope that you guys saw, I tried to, hey, Christina and Brianna, I hope you guys saw that I extended the due dates on assignments. If I didn't, email me. Everything should be extended. I want everybody to have another week. And I wanted to talk, one thing that I wanted to talk about tonight was photographing your stuff. And that's a big part of what this assignment is about. Let's see, a lot of people have already taken the quizzes, and I have been grading stuff. I have not gotten everything graded. Now, I did want to ask something. I do want to leave the service learning thing available for people who want to do that. But I do want to also make it clear that we will not have a service learning designation. I started doing this about 2.5 years ago because there was a possibility we could get a service learning designation for our class, but that does not look like it's going to be a possibility. And I hope nobody's really heard about that. So I wanted to talk about what those things are, the research and service learning options. I have been talking to the head of the department that oversees these kinds of stuff, so we should have it all sorted out by the end of September. But what I want to, if you want to do service, I don't know why my background, okay. If you want to do service learning, I usually have about a quarter of the people in the class who want to do that. And I will talk about what those two things are, service learning and research. And again, please do not stress out about due dates for this, until the end of September, because I'm still sorting things out. And you'll see stuff pop up, but do not stress about due dates. I have had a couple people email me that were concerned. I don't want you to be concerned. We will start stressing out about them in a couple weeks after I get some of this stuff sorted, if that's all right with you guys. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to stress out, go ahead. I don't want to stop you. But for the rest of you who don't necessarily want to do that, please feel free to avoid it. There are a couple things that I don't know if I don't remember if I covered last week that I want to cover. And so what this class will look like is I'll cover a couple things regarding policies in the class. I will talk about photography and show you the darling little video that I made, and I'll put it on our class YouTube channel. And then I want to talk about a little bit about the quiz and going through that. I think what I would like to do going forward is go through the quiz before the due date so people can kind of get a feeling for it, because that will really help set the stage for that module. And I want to talk about some of the options that people have done making the little house. So does that seem okay to everybody? I am really impressed with, we have about half the class here, and I think that is truly awesome. I absolutely love that. What I did a little bit differently this year is, or this term, is previous terms I've had people vote on what day we would meet, thinking that would make people more invested in deciding a time to come together. And as an example, this last term, out of 20 people, one person showed up for every meeting and two other people showed up kind of, and that was it. So had an attendance of, what is that? 7% live. And tonight we have about half the people in the class showing up. And I think that that is really awesome. It's interesting. I've taught for almost 20 years. And when people have the option of doing stuff on their own or showing up live, what I have seen over that 20 years is the people who have the kind of dedication to show up live, even if it's awkward or irritating or frustrating, and even though you get the same amount of credit for watching the video, what I have noticed is there's a one-to-one correspondence that those people have towards also being the kind of dedicated person to earn an A. You know, almost one-to-one. Now, you can get an A without showing up. There's plenty of people to do that, but it's the percentage of people earning A's who do show up all the time is consistently significantly higher. So yeah, and I think a lot of that speaks to um, the fact that the people who get A's are the ones that have the dedicated space in their apartment that they're working on. They have the 5 to 10 hours a week blocked out for each class that they're working on. They're the ones that have a lot of self-discipline. And I think that coming to classes live when they're offered live, whenever that is a possibility, is a symptom of that kind of self-discipline. Now, I'm also the kind of person who has a full-time job, a secondary job, and 3 part-time jobs. And so I know that you take oh no, I turned the light off. You take an online class when you don't have a normal human schedule, and that's perfectly fine. Sorry about that. I accidentally unplugged something. But enough about that. So, and you know, if you're the kind of person who works really hard and can't make it live, but you're also watching all the videos, I applaud you as well. But thank you very much. It makes it a lot easier for me to do what I do without having to pretend that somebody's there. You know, and to be completely honest, when I do pretend that somebody's there, there's always, you know, a little bit of sadness because I feel like the last kid picked for kickball, and the only reason I was picked for kickball is because everybody else feels sorry for me. So thank you for not doing that. All right. Enough about that. In the syllabus, there's a couple policies that I wanted to point out. And I wanted to, if I talk about them, you don't see that they are easily foundable. What's the word? Easily found in the syllabus and stuff like that, please drop me an email and let me know so they're front and center. And all of you guys are professional artists. These make a lot of sense to you, but I need to iterate them. One is about AI and applying AI. Artificial intelligence, avoiding it would be kind of like our ancestors 2 million years ago, avoiding an easy source of water. I don't think it's a very smart thing to do to avoid it. And I would heartily suggest that whenever you can, use it in your writing. But when you use it as a tool. Don't have it do the writing for you. By that, I mean, have it help you with outlines and a rough draft. But when you turn in your writing to me, it needs to be your own voice. So whatever you get from AI, whatever program you're using, rewrite it into your own voice and turn that in rather than the AI. When you submit something under your own name as your own work, but it's done by somebody else or something else, that is called cheating. But when you are eliciting the help from a tool and then you adjust it to your own voice and you use it to supplement your time and help you do a better job, it remains a tool. It's not replacing you. And I think that is an important distinction. There are a lot of tools that teachers have that when they apply them can help them weed out chat GPT responses that are unaltered. But when you rewrite something in your own voice, I mean, I love that. It just makes it a lot easier. Does that make sense to everybody? what that distinction is. And then one of the dead giveaways for me is because some of the classes I've taught, people have turned in an opinion paper where in the middle it says, I cannot offer an opinion because I'm only a language program. And then, that's a pretty good, the thing that annoys me about that is at the very least, the student should have taken 3.5 minutes to read over something before turning it in. Otherwise, they just look dumb. And I don't want you guys to look dumb. Another policy is, and I don't think I have this written anywhere, but I want you guys to be mindful of it. This isn't an art history class, and we probably won't cover it a lot, but I have had somebody say something to a colleague where they thought that the art that was being looked at in the class was pornographic. One of the artists that we talk about is Kiki Smith. She is absolutely brilliant. She's phenomenal. She's amazing. But she does use the human form in her art. So does Michelangelo and Da Vinci. And there are a lot of artists that do that. There is a very big difference between looking at something in an art class that people feel is an important instance of artistic expression and having somebody else thuggishly label that as pornography. And I think the difference is pornography is the intentional commodification of the human form. And that's not what we're doing. If we do look at the human body in an art class, we're looking at the human body as a subject of expression. Do you guys understand the difference or see the difference? Okay. If there's anybody who's under 18 in the class, please let me know, and I'll see what I can to mitigate exposure. But I think we talked about it last week. Art is a huge medium of a set of media for the expression of communication. And whenever we communicate with something new or confront something new, there's going to be a little bit of us that's going to be offended. And I need people to avoid diving into offense sensitivity. It seems like in social media, a lot of people have made a name for themselves by trolling the internet and just finding things to be offended about. And I think that that's an absurd waste of your resources. Whenever you meet a person for the first time, you set aside your desire to be offended long enough, at least, that you can kind of begin to understand the context and the frame of reference from which they're coming. Please do the same with the art that we see. Is that appropriate to ask? I really hope you feel that it is. That's because then if we resist the urge to be offended, it opens up all sorts of potential experience that we can have. And then after you find the context, after you learn a little bit more about the person, if you choose to be offended, that's your right. And there's plenty of that. When I found out that Christopher Lee was in the Guinness Book of World Records for being one of the oldest death metal composers, do you know who Christopher Lee is? He played Lord Dooku in Star Wars. He has more on-screen sword fighting time than any other actor, living or dead. And he played Sauron the White in The Lord of the Rings. Now, do you know who I'm talking about? He is also, but when he died in his 90s, he was the oldest death metal composer in the world. And that was something that really startled me. And you can, finding information like that and seeing the music, you can choose to be offended, or you can realize this guy was a super genius in several different things. In fact, when he was bored, he would learn a new language. He played the assassin in Man with the Golden Gun in the 60s, James Bond movie. And one of the James Bond women was from Norway, if I remember right. Nobody was speaking Norwegian. So he took a week or two, learned Norwegian so that she had somebody she could talk to on the set. I think finding out stuff like that, I think, is just amazing. And if I had chosen to be offended by death metal, my admiration would have found another source. Anyway, another policy there's two other policies that I think are really important. One is the late policy. I do have the option of docking points, but I will tell you right now that I have never refused an extension from anybody who's ever asked me, from the dumbest of excuses, my hair's not dry enough, to, real, I'm sorry, I may have to drop this class because I just missed my flight out of Bolivia and I don't know if I'm going to get back in time. It doesn't matter if you communicate with me, there's always an extension, because this is an online class, for crying out loud. We have to have flexibility. So please do not stress about due dates or anything like that, and just keep me apprised of what's going on. And then the last one is, for our final, I am required to give a final, and you are required to take it to get full credit for this class. The final will be something that I release on the first day of finals week, and you will have the entire week to do it. It will consist of essentially a series of essay questions. You will have your final projects in this class as well that kind of tie everything up, but your final will be essentially a set of riveting and engaging essay questions. But if you choose to not turn that in, you can lose up to an entire letter grade. So do not avoid taking the final. The reason I need to say that is because a lot of students will take off and dismiss the last week of finals week because they want to get home early. And over the years, I don't know, I've probably taught, I'm trying to do the math in my head and I'm tired, at least 637 students over the last 15 years. And I've only had maybe 9 come up with really stupid things to say after they missed the final. One of them, the person called me in a bathroom in the airport in Newark, New Jersey, saying that they didn't have a good enough connection to get online and do the final, even though they called me from a bathroom and everybody has the internet on their phone now. And other people have emailed me 2 months after the end of the class. I'm not kidding. This happened. 2 people did this a year and a half ago. Emailed me 2 months after the end of the class and said, "Hey, I got a grade lower than I expected. Why was that?" And I mentioned, "Well, did you take the final?" I said, "No, I thought that was, I didn't think it would matter that much because I was doing so good on everything else." So I want you to be absolutely clear. The policy is take the final. It's not a difficult final. It's not a test. They're essay questions about your experience during the class. But if you choose to avoid the final, then you can lose up to a full letter grade. All right? Is that clear for everybody? If those, I would really appreciate the help if those are not written so that they are clear in the documentation for the class. Please let me know so I can clarify them, because they are written in the class, but I want to make sure that everybody can find it easily. So if you find that it's difficult to find those, please email me and I will fix it. All right, are you guys ready for a super exciting 2-minute video I made literally moments before we got online for this class? Are you guys excited for that? Super excited? You guys do not look very super excited. I see like 3 people nodding their heads and that's all. Fine, whatever. I'm going to show it anyway. One of the things that we talked last week about documentation and how important that is. Do you guys know what the easiest way to protect your rights as an artist is? You know what the easiest way to prove that you're the artist of something? The record of first exhibition. That means it's the first public exhibition of a work that you've done and having that recorded. Do you know what the easiest way to do that is? How many of you guys have Instagram or Facebook? When you get done with something, post it on Instagram right away. And you post it with the title, you post it with the date that you completed it and everything like that. And that way, at any point in the future, when somebody tries to show your work as their own or claiming it's the first time it was ever seen or anything like that, you have on the web or the internet uh, a concrete record of first exhibition. And that's one of the easiest ways to protect yourself. I think this is also important. I've had, it averages about one student a semester. Say one of your projects, your last project, you're going to use your wire, you're going to use your carving, you're going to use a bunch of other stuff, put it together and make a new thing. And once a semester, somebody will tell me, I have everything dedicated in this one spot. My mom came over for Thanksgiving, thought she'd clean up. I came back and I found that she had thrown away all my stuff. Somebody else went to Spain, did all her work in Spain, and coming back, the TSA wouldn't let her bring the stuff in. It was thrown away. I don't know why the TSA would care, but evidently they do. But she lost everything. But if you have photographs of everything, if you documented, even if it's lost, then there's something that we can work with. And that's another reason why documentation is very important. And also just to respect your work. When you document it, it gives it a little bit more weight in your own mind. And I think it helps to help you value your own work as well. When we take photos in this, some of the things that are in this class, some of the things that are distracting are if you have, for example, baseboard and a wood floor and a white wall or an eggshell wall, and then you lean your thing up against the wall and take a picture of it, it's going to be really disconcerting. It's not going to look very good. And so I wanted to show you a really, really simple way to make good photos if you don't have access to the sculpture lab on campus. How many of you have access to campus on a regular basis? Okay, a few of you. There's an infinity screen or affinity background that you can use in the photo lab. Do you guys know where the photo lab is on campus? The main sculpture room, where you usually hear Jason being grumpy. That if you go in, do you know where the sculpture room is? You go to the bathrooms there on the 5th floor, and then as you're facing the bathrooms, you turn right, and that takes you to the sculpture lab, and then the back door of the sculpture lab opens out onto the shipping dock, the receiving dock. You guys know where I'm talking about? Okay. And if you go into that room, to your right, immediately to your right on that wall is a counter. You follow that counter along, there's a door. Open that door. It's a little narrow room that's about maybe 4 feet wide and about 16 feet long. At the end of it, you have a couple lights, you have an infinity background, and you can use that to set up and take photos. So that's where the photo lab is. I would heartily recommend you do not ever interrupt anybody who's teaching an active session, but you can go there anytime that the building is open and the class is not in session. If you need to take photos, that's the only time that's available. Politely ask if you can talk to the teacher for a moment and if they would mind. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be perfectly fine with you going back there as long as you don't have, as long as you're not throwing a slam party or anything like that. As long as you keep it quiet, you'll be fine. But if a class is in session, you always ask the teacher first, and if they say no, there's no recourse. You get out of the way until class is over. Does that make sense to everybody? But I will show you this in case you do not have access. Okay. And I'm going to share my screen really quick. This is how I set up my own photo, and then I will show you what the photos look like when I was done. And I will talk through this a little bit, so I'll do a lot of pausing. Give me a sec while I share this. Okay, can everybody see this? My Dell box. Okay, this is the carpet. I had moved a bunch of stuff around the house, so there's a lot of mess everywhere. There's not a lot of space. Do you guys know about how big this box is? Can anybody guess? It's about maybe 16 inches high, maybe 2 feet wide, is all. So there's not a lot of floor space. Okay. Okay, and this is just a regular white sheet. And this particular one, I folded it into quarters to give it a little bit of body, but I would recommend ironing it. But this is what I use for my infinity screen or infinity background. And I did not iron this at all. You don't have to. It still turns out fine. But I would recommend, if you really want the pictures to look good, the photos to look good, I would recommend ironing it. So I just set up the sheet over this, and then I just kind of looped it over the box, and I'm tucking it in, but notice that I'm not tucking the bottom in. I don't know, can you guys see my mouse? Okay, so I tucked it into the sides to kind of straighten it out a bit, but I'm not tucking in the bottom because I want a little bit of a curve there. And what I've got for lights are just the two really, really cheap halo lights. And these were ones that I actually found. Somebody evidently had given them to me. I'd forgotten about it. I was just rummaging around and found them. And I would say try to find LED lights that give a clean light as much as you can. Warm light works a little bit, but the brighter the light, usually the better for photographing. And I also have a couple lamps from IKEA. That works good. If you have any sort of a lamp with a lampshade, take the lampshade off and use that as a light source, and you can kind of wiggle it around. Nobody cares what the lights are going to look like because they're behind the photo that you make. You just want to make sure that whatever it is you're photographing looks good and is well lit. That's the second one. Yes, this theatrical dramatic pause is because I was stumbling around trying to grab the thing that I wanted to take a photo of. When you're photographing, you want to have multiple light sources because if you just have one, it's going to have a pretty strong shadow. With multiple light sources, you can move them around a little bit and mitigate the shadows. I would say don't get rid of the shadows completely necessarily. Just move things around, move the lights around until you're comfortable with what it looks like. And I have overhead, it's an orange light, and then I have two white lights that I'm using to kind of focus on things. And I like that blend because it looks more like, or it feels more like regular daylight. Now on this, I am setting it up so that I'm taking a photo. I'm trying to find a good spot to take the photo. And when you do this, you'll probably take photos with your phone. So bring your phone in, but don't crop it so tight that you don't have any room to tighten it up more. Because what you'll want to do is on your phone, you have that handy dandy edit feature. You can bring in the sides so you crop out whatever background is showing up. This is important. If your item isn't going to balance well, you can lean it against the back of the sheet and light it so that you don't see a lot of shadows. Or you can even have somebody put their arm behind the sheet and hold it in place and then set up the photo. So you don't, because seeing a hand in there is really distracting and it looks awful. Okay, it looks like before I put this online, I can edit out the last 30 seconds. Let's see, is there any other? Nope, yeah, I'll edit out the last 30 seconds before I put it up on the YouTube channel. But I think I'll also include this, I'll add it into the module when you're doing photographing. And so you'll have it in a couple different places. Now I want to show you the photos that I took doing this. And you saw it was about a minute and a half altogether that I spent putting this together and photographing. Minute and a half, 2 minutes tops, something like that. And now I want to show you what it looks like. Okay, so I took 2 photos, just slightly different, but all the editing is in the phone. And you can get AI programs. I know you guys can find them. Let me know when you do so I can share them with everybody. There are AI programs where we could smear out all the wrinkles of the sheet and make the background, pale neutral gray instead of the white. So we can definitely do that. We can do different things like that. And I'd say, go ahead if you can. But what do you think about this photo after 2 minutes of setup? What is that too bad? What do you think? Is that a good picture? I submitted actually a photo like this to a show and it got in uh, simply because I didn't have access to a professional photographer or anything like that, and I just set it up like that. But with AI programs, Sharon is really good. Sharon is one of the faculty. She's really good at using free stuff and finding free stuff on the internet to use. When she was a graduate student, she did this kind of thing, actually ended up getting it into a show, and it sold for $2,500. The things that she took a picture of in her bedroom with a sheet as a backdrop. So, you can do this kind of stuff on a low budget, but I don't want you um, to just hold it in your hand and think, well, this is the best I can do. Well, it's not. Don't set it on a tabletop that has a distracting background. If you set it on a table, what you can do is put the table against the wall, take your sheet, tape the sheet or thumbtack it onto the wall. If it's not your wall, don't thumbtack it, just tape it up. And then, or even drape it over a curtain rod or something like that. Pull it out so that you don't have the back bottom crease, and then set your object up right there to take the photo. You see what I'm saying? What I'm describing? Can you visualize that? Okay. Yeah, I wanted to show that to you because that is just one option. All those other things, taking photos from different angles, I want you to explore that for taking a picture of your house and have fun with that. I would recommend taking 15 or 20 different photos, put your camera inside of the object and walk away. Make a little video. One person did this. They set their house next to a little stream that they found, walking around Provo, and took a picture of it there. That would be totally awesome. They made actually it ended up being a 7-second video, and you could hear the stream and everything like that. So I want you to be creative with the different types of things, but for the rest of the class, be mindful of the photography. And because if you don't show respect for your own work, you really can't expect other people to have respect for it too. Well, you can. I mean, people do, but you can't really honestly expect other people to respect your work this how you would want them to view it if you can't show respect for it yourself. I am trying to find something else to share, and I can't, so I'm not going to worry about it. Do we have any questions about what I've that video showing you what was going on, all that kind of stuff? Does this make sense to you guys? Do you understand what to do? Like with Whitney, her walls are absolutely perfect, and if she wanted to, over her shoulder is it looks like there's a table there. And I'm not picking on you, Whitney. I'm just picking on you because of the background. Or I'm picking you because of the background. You could use that table really easily. I think in the kits, there's going to be some tag board, a big sheet of white tag board that everybody can use for their infinity screen or the background. And what Wendy could do is use sticky tack to stick one end of it up on the wall and then have it fold down, and not fold down necessarily, but curve down so you don't get that sharp angle in the back. Have it curve down, set your sculpture in the middle of that end that's resting against the table. Take a picture of it, edit out or crop out the lines and the extraneous areas beyond the limit of your poster board, and then submit that photo, and that will turn out really good. And once you get your kits, I can explain a little bit better what I'm talking about. Hopefully you guys can imagine it. You're going to get a piece of about 2 foot by 3 foot tag board, or it'll be maybe 20 by 30 inches, something like that. And you'll do the same thing with it as I did with the sheet. Does that make sense? So you have a curved background that goes like that, so you don't have a sharp edge behind your sculpture. Can everybody visualize that? Am I making any sense at all? Okay. All right. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate that. And I'm absolutely certain that Riley and Mary are like dancing and doing the thumbs up and everything like that. We just can't see them because they don't have their video on. So I'll just pretend that they agree too.
I personally guarantee it.
All right. Excellent. So I want to, if we don't, if, well, I guess before going on, are there any questions about what I just talked about, the policies, the photography? All right. Now, anybody here, are any of you familiar with free AI programs that you can use to clean up photography from your phones? Is anybody familiar with any of those? Okay, would you guys keep your eyeballs peeled? Because if you come up with them, if you find them, would you let me know? Because then I will share them with everybody. And I'm absolutely certain that on YouTube or something like that, there's going to be somebody who demonstrates that. So if you guys send that in with your attendance for this week, you will get extra credit for it. And when I see you in the hallways on campus, I will personally staple a gold star to your forehead. So, I mean, if that's not an incentive to go out of your way to do extra work, I don't know what is. All righty, I want to go and over the quiz right now. And in this, as we go over the quiz, I'm not going to be able to see people raising their arms or doing thumbs up or anything like that. So just unmute yourself and ask a question, okay? If you have, if there's any point over the quiz that you have a question about one of the questions, that's kind of a meta thing to say, isn't a question about the questions. Just turn off your mic, your mute, and go ahead and speak up, okay, please? I mentioned last week that when you get it is important to have access to the book Does any of you do any of you remember? And can you just speak up? How many ways did I give you to access the text? Does anybody remember?
5 or 6.
Yes, absolutely, 5 or 6. And of those, about half of them you could pay $3 to $30, and the other half the are a lot more open. You know, and one of them was even completely free. Since then, I've found 4 other websites that might have the textbook on it for free access. I am looking into them more to see if we can and if they're legal, which is probably a good thing. And as though they end up, as I vet them, I will add them to the list as well. So there should not be any excuse for people not having access to the textbook, at least from archive, from that archive website, and it's archive.org. At least that gives you access for free to the first edition, and that'll be fine. The reason why that's important is because each of these quizzes, there are ringers. And the questions, the answer is only correct if you use the answer that is from the textbook, even though there are other answers. Like, for example, what is the definition of a line that all of you remember from high school math?
Shortest distance between 2 points.
Right, exactly. But if you use that answer in this quiz, it's going to be wrong, because what you need to reference is the definition of a line that's in the textbook. So that's one of the ringer questions. When we look at this question 1, time, materials, and tools are the 3 main factors that affect the cost of a work of art. This is one of the ones that is pointed out in the textbook, but also all of you guys are professionals. This is a very obvious yes. I mean, obviously, these are things that you factor in. That's one of the reasons why we do the work log, because your time is valuable. And your time will always be valuable. Sometimes you don't pay for your time with money. Sometimes your time, the exchange is for a grade, but your time is always valuable. So yes, that's obviously, or that is a really obvious yes. Now on this one, I would like to get somebody's answer about this. How do photographs distort our perception of 3D work? What is the first obvious answer? What does the photograph do to it immediately?
It flattens it to 2 dimensions.
Yes, exactly. Photographs will always distort 3D work. But by taking the time to do the best photo we can, it at least gives an approximation of how we want somebody to perceive it. And then in this module, you'll also see a half a dozen different artists that specifically use photography to display the 3D work, which I think is really kind of interesting. Is this ever true of anybody's artwork? Do you ever need to consider the place where the work will be presented? When you are taking part in a show, what's one of the first things you want to do when you know where your work is going to possibly be displayed? Like that gallery that's right by the department offices next to the Norda Center. One of the first things I did when I found out where the shows were going to be held is I wanted to go in and look at the lighting. I want to see the traffic space. That has a lot of really good traffic interaction with people waiting to go into plays and stuff. I think it's great. But for people who spend all their time in the computer lab, it's going to be hard to get there and see the exhibit. So that's something to consider. And then there's also another gallery space, I think on the 3rd floor, that is just up the ways a bit from the police station on campus and the auto shop. No, I'm sorry, it's on the 4th floor. So you do get some really nice traffic there too, occasionally. But it's always a good idea to check out, at least online, find photos of the space where your exhibit is going to be held. So that is And I think that this is true for 2D, but very much for 3D as well, because you want people to actually enjoy the fact that your work is three-dimensional. So you want it to be an environment where people can actually appreciate the multiple sides, multiple views. Is this one true? Number 4? Who are two of the artists in your list of background artists or who rely on photos for their work to be seen? Just tell me two of the artists. One guy has a single word for his name.
Andrew Goldsworthy and Slinkachu.
Yeah, that's 2 of them. Excellent. And there's several others too. But Andy Goldsworthy, his art is designed to fall apart in a couple minutes. So he that's the only way people can really see most of his stuff is when he photographs it. And then Slinkachu, what does Slinkachu do that makes it so that the photos are really important? Does anybody remember from the videos about him? He'll set his stuff up and then walk away. So sometimes the only permanent record is the photos that he's taken, because like the Last Resort, that's a famous one. The puddle dried up, after a few hours. So there was nothing there. And some of them, dogs will come by and pick up the little figures and make off with them. So the only real permanency about any of his work are the photos. Now, instead of saying true or false, what is the dimension that's unique to three-dimensional work? When you guys submit your photos or your printouts of digital work or anything like that to a show, what are the dimensions that you have to give?
Depth is the thing that's unique.
Yeah, depth is the thing that's unique. Yeah. And when you're doing 2D, it's always height and width that you talk about. But yes, depth is the thing that's unique. Who knows what a maquette is?
Isn't it like a
Anybody?
smaller scale of what you're gonna do? Like a kind of like
Yes, Melissa, that's exactly right. When they were doing the animation for the Transformers movies, the first one that they did, they had to build a maquette, the animators did, of the Transformer and start moving it around physically so they could digitize it, because they didn't want to have anything shown in the transformation sequence that didn't exist as part of the object. But for a lot of sculpture, a lot of the times, like Kiki Smith will make maquettes, but she'll then also do stuff where she doesn't use maquettes. Doherty, Paul Doherty, he does these huge stick houses, and he rarely makes maquettes for that. He just starts making stuff architecturally with the sticks and sees where it goes. Andy Goldsworthy will almost never do maquettes. He just goes out in the wilds of the Highlands and starts making stuff. So there are lots of different ways to do this. For when I plan an assemblage, a lot of the times I will start with sketching, and I will find objects that kind of gets me thinking about what I could do with the sketches, and then I'll start putting stuff together until it comes together. And when I do glass work, one of my glass sculptures, I'll almost always make it out of cardboard or tagboard first. I'll make it a maquette. And the difference is the assemblage, I want to see what light does to the different things and how they fit together, how they talk to each other, the different parts I'm putting together. And for the glass, glass is something where I only want to have to cut it once and shape it once. So making a maquette first and making a full size maquette out of cardboard gives me the patterns that I need. You know, I can easily change in the cardboard and then use that as the pattern to make the glass, which is a lot more difficult to change the shape of. So and then other people do work differently, but maquettes definitely are not the only way. I would like to hear from 3 different people telling me 3 different things to consider about your audience as an artist. Somebody who hasn't, Brianna or Allison, have either of you said anything today?
I haven't yet, but I can say something for this question.
Okay.
I for my quiz, I was putting that the cost is something the artist should consider. So when they're putting together their art, they will put it together in a way that it will that the audience will approve of, so that they will pay money to buy it or pay to see it.
Oh yeah, that's excellent. That's really good. How many of you guys have gone to an art fair or art festival? There's some really good ones in Orem and Salt Lake. Any of you guys have gone that, or like a farmer's market type of thing? When you go to one of those, if you're an artist, you are considering a very specific clientele, and and that's where your price points are going to fit in. But if you're doing something where it's a special one-person show in the lobby of the Met during the Met Gala, the price point is going to be very different. So, excellent. Somebody else who hasn't spoken yet, like Riley, what's another thing that you should be considering with your in regards to your audience?
Yeah, sorry in advance if my baby screams real quick. I put more or less just because should consider kind of the culture and experience that the artist or the audience is coming from. So you don't want to show it in somewhere that, it's not somewhere that piece of art would want to be recognized or shown.
That is a brilliant point, and that is very important. I actually knew somebody at BYU who got upset. They said that no child should be the victim of editing. That was his moral stance. He felt that any sort of editing was evil. And I thought, it's one thing when you use editing to change the meaning of something. Like when somebody, and the humorous example is on YouTube when they do the honest trailers for movies. But you have to self-edit. You can't expose children to an emergency room setting. Yeah, this guy wanted to go take his kids to have a friend of mine who does embalming wanted to have them watch an autopsy. 4 and a 6-year-old, and I'm thinking, oh hell no, that is not something you want to do. But I would do, like, if the audience that you're going to be exhibiting, that it's going to be the first Friday art stroll at Provo, you're going to be doing a very different kind of art than if your audience is an international piercing exhibition, or body modification. You're going to be, and it's not because one is better or worse than another. It's because you want your art to be appreciated. When I send in stuff for a juried show, I always do a background check on who's going to be the jurors. Because if they don't like art, like what I do, it's going to be worse than useless. I'm just going to be throwing my entrance fee away if I enter it into a show. And we do that. How many of you guys do bookbinding? Anybody? Because if you send bookbinding into a painting show, it's going to be completely useless. But if you're trying to get into a bookbinding exhibit with your watercolors, it's going to be useless too, because it just doesn't fit. So hopefully that makes sense. What's the third one? So we talked about price. We talked about audience. What's the third one? I would say a good one might be context. You know, what's the theme? What's the expected theme? If the show is just open student show, and all of you guys, I hope you guys all enter the student shows on campus every time they come up. Whether or not you get in, it's a good experience to enter those. And then also the Springville, I think next week is the cutoff for the Springville exhibit. You know, look at that and see if it's worth it your time getting into. Is there a theme? You know, a student show is probably not going to have a theme, or a county show is probably not going to have a theme. But you can go online. Call for Entries is a really good website that you can go to and look and see what kind of themes they have. Like one that I thought was really interesting in Florida just last month was about geometry. And again, when you want to get in or want to connect with an audience, what kinds of themes are you working with that you can find an audience for through a themed show? And some of my favorite ones are there's the like creepypasta type of themes, you know, where it's just the stuff that's just a little bit off of kilter, a little bit dark. I think those are always kind of fun themes. But if your art is, you specialize in juvenile themed illustration where it's bright and smiley, it's probably going to be a bad idea trying to get into, you know, a Tim Burton type exhibit. But so those are all good things to be mindful of. What's the difference between fine arts and applied arts? And this is right out of your textbook. What are fine arts? Generally.
Fine arts are visual arts, and applied arts are commercial arts.
I think that is a pretty good separation. That's not exactly, I don't know if that's exactly what the textbook is getting at. But I think that the maybe that the connotations that commercial brings to my mind is a little bit different. I think fine arts are usually ones that are intended to be looked at, like paintings. You know, exactly. Ballet, opera, the stuff that you sit and watch are usually fine arts. And then applied arts is like Alphonse Mucha did a lot of his work designing silverware and jewelry. Lalique did a lot of their Art Nouveau work in like vases, stuff that you could put flowers in for lamps, things like that. And Art Deco, a lot of the design work was done for designing automobiles, for example. And those are definitely applied arts, even though they feel sculptural. So I think, yeah, if it's commercial, if it's something that you can use in everyday life, then it's an applied art. And if it's something that's designed specifically for you to look at and enjoy and appreciate just by watching it, then it's a fine art. I think that's a really good. Now this one, I get some interesting answers. I could tell right away the people that read the book and the people that haven't yet. What are the extremes of material choice? And this references the text specifically, so it is in the book. And I've had several people send me things like, over the years, stone and wax. And I'll give you a clue. That is not the answer. What are the two extremes of material choice? Somebody other than Christina, because she has answered almost everything.
I can't remember it word for word, but it was something about the nature of it and how it's like emphasizing its nature versus using it or something like that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're right on the right track. One of the quizzes, there's a photo of something called trompe l'oeil, which is where you take something and make it look like something else. Brian Christensen at BYU is a ceramicist who's really good at doing the trompe l'oeil with ceramics. And he made something that looked like a really well-used rubber flip-flop, but he made it out of clay. And he made it so that when somebody was moving the exhibit around to change the lighting, they almost dropped it because they expected to pick up rubber, and it was clay. And that is making the material look like something completely different. But then you also get people like, there's a friend of mine who does woodworking. Before going into art school, he actually worked as a lumberjack in British Columbia. And he'll find wood that he'll polish and burnish and then oil until the beauty comes with the form of the wood, these big forms that he makes, and the wood itself, you can really feel the richness of the grain and the years in the tree. And that's the other extreme, where the material is celebrated as what it is. So we don't often think about that. It's not material choice between something permanent like stone and something impermanent like wax. It's between how you use the materials. Are you using the mild steel so that it celebrates its steelness? Or are you using the mild steel so it looks like something completely different? Like, something to steel, like Anish Kapoor will use burnished aluminum where it becomes just a reflection of the surrounding landscape. You can't even see the aluminum anymore. Or Jeff Koons will use steel and then spray paint it so that it looks like the steel is a gigantic balloon animal. And that's the other extreme. So yeah, excellent. Very good. Now, do you guys remember this? Talking about French, when he finished the Lincoln Memorial, he wanted it specifically lit in a certain way because that's how he intended it to be experienced. And then Congress wanted it to light it like this because it was cheaper. Which one would you be really pissed about if you had made the Lincoln Memorial? I'm just going to put it out there. I think the one on the right makes it look like he was holding in a fart and accidentally let it go. And that one on the left looks like the Lincoln Memorial that we're used to. So what was the difference? What was French doing? Do any of you remember this? He took a series of photos with different lighting, with the lighting coming from different direction, and he presented that to Congress with the proposal to get the lighting, to pay for the lighting that he wanted around the Lincoln Memorial. And when Congress saw how different the lighting was, because nobody had even thought about it before then, really, because photography was still relatively new for this kind of a thing, for this kind of documentation. What do you think Congress decided to do?
They gave
They
him the
agreed
artificial
to.
lights.
Yes, exactly. Both of you, Whitney and Melissa, they went with the artificial lights because that's what the sculptor had intended. So yeah, excellent. How important is it to you when you do your work to have it lit well? If it's printed out or if it's on display, even if you're a photographer and you're displaying prints, it is pretty important to be in control of the light, isn't it? Or to at least know what's going on with the light. I think that's really valuable, and it's very valuable for 3D as well. Okay, 4 degrees of three-dimensionality: relief, frontal, fully rounded, walkthrough. Who can describe what relief is? And I'm looking for Millie. Mary, I don't know if you can talk, or Allison for one of these. Who wants to describe what relief is?
Yeah, I can do relief. So I said that it's like kind of characterized by having like a flat background. And then like the subject matter kind of like pops out of the background, or it's like kind of being carved into it a little bit. So it's kind of like grooved a little bit. So
Yes, that's excellent. Like the face of a coin is a good example of relief. So wonderful. Next one is frontal. Who can describe frontal?
Frontal is works that are meant to be seen from the front view.
Yes, exactly. There's oh, I can't remember his name. He's on my Instagram. He's a Czech artist that uses architectural remnants when people remodel their houses, and he makes these paintings, but he makes them with these wood elements that come out of the wall. So the painting, instead of flat against the wall, kind of makes ripples, and it's just really, really fascinating. But it's definitely three-dimensional, but it's intended to be seen only from the front. So yeah, excellent, very good. Third one, fully round. What does that refer to? And what's
That's
an
referring to-
example? Sorry,
Sorry.
really?
I was just going to say it's meant to allow the user to go fully within 360 around the thing, to give them space to be able to view it better.
Yes, excellent. What's an example? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. I like David's or Michelangelo's David, for example. It's something that you can walk all the way around. Any of the fountains on campus, you can walk all the way around. That kind of stuff. Yeah, definitely. And then the last one, what's walkthrough, and what's a good example?
It's like when you're surrounded by it, and in the book there was one about like horses, I think, that were placed in an exhibit.
So you had to walk between the horses?
Yeah, I think it was horses, but it's pretty much one that you're or it's like surrounded, but like you go into the space of it.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of being separate from it and seeing it from all sides, you can see it from the inside. And I think that's amazing. And an example of this kind of art that we experience every day is any piece of architecture. So yeah, in addition to the horses you were talking about, Melissa, anything that you can walk under or between or around or into. And a house is a really good example of this kind of three-dimensional art. So yeah, excellent. I like yours better. Now there's 9 ways of involving the viewer. Instead of going through 5 of them, from that part of your reading, what are some of the ways that you guys thought were interesting? And one of the things that I really like is just the context of the artist writes. Sometimes that will completely change how I view something. Like the title that the artist gives. And a title can completely change the way that you approach something. Like if Duchamp had titled the men's urinal, nobody would have thought about it very much. But by titling it The Fountain, he completely changed how people approach it. What are some other ways that we can involve a viewer? I'm just looking for a few.
Scale
I
was
think
one of
movement's
them.
really nice.
I'm sorry, Allison? And then Riley.
Oh, sorry. I was saying scale.
Scale? Yeah, can you think of an example of something like that?
I can't remember the artist's name, but the one with the miniature figurines, he would always put the mini figurines next to larger objects to show that difference in scale.
Yes, very good. Slinkachu. Like when he does something with the cigarette butts, where you and they're these tiny, tiny figures are interacting with the cigarette butts. Okay, Riley, what was your example?
Movement.
Movement. Can you give an example of an artwork that demonstrates movement?
I can't remember the exact artwork, but I know when I was doing some research on Andy, and I can't remember his last name all of a sudden, I know it was saying that he focuses a lot on that in his work. And so just through reading that, I thought it was really interesting looking at what he was doing.
Andy Goldsworthy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really important for him in two different ways. One, the illusion of movement, like when he does his walls or his icicles and they kind of undulate around. And then also when he does his stuff where he sets leaves on the surface of a body of water. You know, very quickly the water interacts with the sculpture, it becomes kinetic and it falls apart. Another one, he does the rain silhouettes. And that's an interesting one because it's evidence of the water moving afterwards. I think those are, yeah, those are all really good examples. Excellent. Oh, and that was the last question. So we're all done with that. Now I'm going back. When we do the sculpture-based photography, people have started turning in their artist reviews, and I love that. Again, when you talk about the artist and the artist reviews, which artist are you talking about? Which are you referring to? I'm going to share my screen really quick here again. Every time you do the artist review, the artists that you talk about are always from the background that is in the module immediately before the assignment labeled artist review. So in the background for this module, I think there's about 8 artists, something like that. And they include Sandy Scoglin, Andy Goldsworthy, Slinkachu, these guys. So that's who the artists we're talking about. I have had people, when they do the artist review, just pick people out at random to work to talk about, and that's not what we're doing. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? I hope it does. Okay, good. Now with the sculpture-based photography, I do want to look a little bit more at the examples that students have done and talk about them. And you guys have, if you want to get started now, that's great. The kit should be available before the weekend, so you guys can get started on them then. But I want you to kind of toy around with ideas now and think about stuff. What I did was go online and I looked at 3D patterns for Christmas ornament gingerbread houses is what I did a search for. That's just how my brain works. But what that gave me was a lot of examples of basically bare bones kind of diagrams that I could use to give me an idea of how to make the structure for my house. And then I use that to work off of. Now, let's see, I'm going to do a search here really quick. Let's see. I'm going to say DIY gingerbread house ornament pattern. And I just type that search in. And then I'm going to see what we can get. Okay, that did not help. Let's see if this helps. Okay, here we go. This is what okay, again, share with you my results really quick here. Okay, so what I typed in was DIY gingerbread house ornament paper pattern. And this is giving me all sorts of different ideas for how I can make my house. But because I am a professional artist and I am not a really lazy 7th grade student, which if any of you guys have 7th graders that are not lazy, congratulations. I was one. Anyway, what I would do is take this, use it as a model, and I'm not going to copy any of this stuff, but I'm going to use it as the foundation for what I make myself. And then I will show you an example of this really quick. This person made this barn using one of these models. Can you see that barn right here in this? See can you see the structure of the barn in that? But it doesn't look like that at all. And that's what I'm talking about. Find an easy pattern that you can use, that you can cut out of tag board, like a file folder or something like that, and use that as your basis, and then just add to it and make it amazing. Like this, the person used that, and then they added, I think that this is aluminum foil wrapped around tongue depressors, and then they cut off the ends, but that's how they got the roof. This looks like it's a thimble and then just another piece of junk out of a junk drawer that they painted and used to make the wind vane at the top. And then this is, painted cardboard that they used to make the sidewalls and the edging. So, very, very creative. They did a lot of really fun stuff. And they did that specifically to make it more fun for them to photograph. Now, these houses, the size that I kind of talk about in the assignment that I want you to be mindful of is if you put your two fists together. So everybody who's on video, put your two fists together just like this. All right. See where your wrists stop and your fists begin? Those two fists together is about the size of the house I want you to make. Has everybody got that? So not much bigger than that. And you can do all sorts, whatever detail you want. The more energy you put into it, the more detail you get, the better it will look and the higher your grade will be. This is a lot of fun. This person, a lot of they made a couple bricks, stamps out of the end of an eraser that they carved, and just used that to stamp all these brick shapes in. And then they just hand painted other pieces of cardboard and stuff like that to make it look like it was a boarded up old building. You can do stuff. You can make texture out of anything. One thing that I like to do is get the organic sponges that you can find on sale at Walmart. You can get a pack of them for $1 or $2. And I apply different colors of paint just with the edge of the sponge. And that gives you really fascinating textures. And then if you do that all over it and then use a whiteout pen, use the whiteout pen to draw the lines in between the bricks. And that is a simple way to make really interesting texture. This person kind of wove. It looks to me like they took file folders, like the color file folders, cut them into strips, and used that to weave a texture for the roof. And then another file folder was that lime green, and they used that as the base to glue everything against. And that turned out looking really interesting. This one, it looks like they used another one of those very simple gingerbread pattern forms. And then just added, it looks like this is one of those stereotypical pine green file folder. And they just cut that into strips and put it over it. And then it looks like they used, popsicle sticks for the wood right here. That turned out really fun. And what I like about this is that they cut holes in it to make it even more interesting to photograph. And then you can see this is their camera right up close and their camera a ways away. So there's lots of different kinds, and this person looks like they were really influenced by this artist up here, Charles Young. And I'll click on that link and show his stuff again. But you can see this, the artist who submitted that, the student who submitted that was very heavily influenced by Charles Young's work when they did their piece. Can you guys see that? So what I want you to do for this is think about the different kinds of things you can do. And I have several photos of this because a person used very different approaches to photograph this in each of their examples. I want you to think about this. I want you to make the house, then I want you to set it down for a while and think about what else you could add to it and add to it. Paint it, decorate it, do all sorts of whatever you can to it and make it interesting and fun for you to photograph, and then start thinking about different ways that you can apply the different fancy schmancy ways you can take pictures with your phone. Maybe you can set your phone inside of it and take a photo of it out through the front door. Maybe put your phone inside of a fridge and set this inside of the fridge and take a photo of the back of the house as the fridge door opens and the light turns on. Close up, far away. Some of the fun photos that people have done is, well, I like that one with the chickens pecking around the barn. I think that looks really cool. Another one is a person photographed their dogs interacting with the house. Their kids, put their phone inside the house and had their kid stoop down and look at it. So their child looked like a giant peering in at the home. People have cut out several windows in their house structure and then lit it from the back or inside and taken photos like that. Or taking photos even while after lighting the thing on fire and making a short film about it. Again, if you do that, I would heartily recommend you take several other photos first before you destroy it, because that's hard to come back from. What I do not want you to do, and I get every semester somebody will do this, they'll set their house up, take a photo of the house close up and then far away of the exact same setting. Don't do that. If you're going to take it far away, put it in a different setting than when you got close up. Set it in a tree, set it in a bush, set it in front of a bush, set it out in the grass, set it in the pathway, set it on a road with cars going by, set it on a sidewalk with a car parked near it. Think about, and then use filters. Think about sepia filters, making it look like it's an old-timey 1910 era photograph. Grainy and sepia. Do a watercolor filter on your image. What I would recommend is maybe 1 or 2 filters, and then the rest, just think of the fun things you can do just with your camera and the house. But it takes some time building the house so it's enjoyable to you and it feels fun to photograph. Oh, you've seen the tatami mats at the Dollar Tree? The little bamboo mats for place settings? Cut one of those up and use that as the roof or the side. One person really got into this and made their house as a little miniature, well, it actually wasn't that many, it was about maybe this tall, toadstool. And she made it out of paper mache and cut windows into it. It ended up being really very cool. Adding graphic elements when you edit the photo, if you want to do that for one, go ahead. That would be really interesting. I think we still need to be able to see enough of it to tell that it's the house that you made. But I would say, yeah, 1 out of the 5 photos, go hog wild. Have fun with it. Does that answer your question? Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat now. Okay, the actual, Mary asked, do you mind if we add graphic elements when we go to edit the photo, like adding things interacting with the house from images? I think if if you want to do that for just one of the images, and that would be kind of fun. And then Christine is asking, are store-bought accessories acceptable? The house needs to be something that you make. You can add store-bought accessories to it. That's what I'm saying. Getting stuff from the Dollar Tree, like one person, the shingles on the roof, they went to the Dollar Tree, got a bunch of the cheap silk flowers, cut the petals off, and used the petals as their shingles. Stuff like that. I would say if you're going to use store-bought accessories, do it in a way that people don't expect. If it's to help give scale, like you found a Matchbox car and you paint it so it looks real, and you park next to the house, that might be kind of fun. Like on a cat on the porch, I think that'd be kind of fun. Especially if the scale matches, or if it's just a little bit wonky, I think that would definitely be fun. All right, now, have we talked about all of that pretty well? I like where you guys are coming from, what you guys are thinking. I think that those are good. Does that make sense, all that we've talked about tonight with the quiz and then talking about this? Okay, excellent. And, going online to find a cutout pattern that you can use and manipulate. I don't want anybody to print something out and use that the way it is. You guys are art students. That's not what you do. But using that, adding to it, using that as a foundation, adding to it and going crazy, just making it fun, I think that would be a really enjoyable thing to explore as you work on that. All right, if there's any more questions, ask me now or email me later, and we'll talk about it next week. Okay. Any final questions from anybody? No? Okay. Excellent. I'm sorry. I'm wondering why people aren't responding, but I forgot I hadn't turned it off sharing. All right. If there's no more questions, that's all I have for tonight. You guys have a safe and fun weekend. Enjoy your holiday Monday for those of you who choose to celebrate. And I will look forward to seeing you guys Wednesday. All righty. I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.